7 months ago, I lost my mother to cancer after a grueling 3-year battle. What made the pain even sharper was discovering that my father had been involved in an affair for almost the entirety of my mother's illness. The revelation devastated my mother, and to add insult to injury, my father's affair partner attempted to reconcile things before my mother's passing. As a result, my father was asked to leave our home. My mother took decisive action to ensure he had no part in her funeral or her estate. She amended her will to ensure that I, her son, would inherit everything, bypassing my father entirely. She entrusted temporary guardianship to my aunt to prevent my father from accessing any of her assets. My mother's wishes were clear. She did not want my father involved with someone else while she was alive, nor did she want him to act as if everything was fine after her passing. Her death was an excruciating experience for me, and I'm still grappling with the void she left behind. I harbor a deep resentment towards my father for making my mother's final months even more painful than they needed to be. His infidelity compounded the agony of her illness. To make matters worse, my father wasted no time in getting engaged to his affair partner just a week after my mother's passing. While they've postponed the wedding for a year, ostensibly to save face, I've distanced myself from my father. Any interaction I have with him is solely because he initiates it. He insisted on informing me of his engagement and pressured me to meet his new partner during our last conversation. I made it unequivocally clear that I will not attend their wedding and advised them not to extend an invitation. Their reaction was predictably defensive, urging me to consider the future and attempting to guilt-trip me. I reminded them that if they hoped to be involved in their future grandchildren's lives, they needed to reassess their priorities. They attempted to manipulate me with a sob story about her being a widow for many years, abandoned by her children who disapproved of her moving on. However, that emotional plea failed to sway me in the slightest. Nevertheless, my father's relatives are furious that I'm taking such a firm stance regarding the wedding. They're well aware of the public perception surrounding my dad, believing my attendance would improve his image. My father himself feels I'm unfairly projecting my feelings about his relationship with my mom onto him, rather than evaluating him based on his role as my father. However, I remain steadfast in my belief that a father who exacerbates his children's grief over losing their other parent is not a commendable father. He made my mother's passing even more difficult for us. Numerous family members have insisted that I attend the wedding and that I'm wrong to refuse. Am I wrong for refusing? Not at all. The voices urging you to attend are likely predominantly from your father's side of the family. I highly doubt your mother's side shares the same sentiment, given their bias and lack of credibility in this matter. Your father's actions were reprehensible. He engaged in an affair the week your mother passed away. That's beyond forgiveness. It's understandable why this other woman's children have severed ties with her. Her actions merit such estrangement. You're under no obligation to attend the wedding. In fact, it could be a final act of defiance in honor of your mother. Let's not forget the absurdity of the affair partner's attempt to reconcile with your mom. Who in their right mind believes they have the audacity to approach a dying woman to introduce their affair partner and seek her approval? It's preposterous. Her children's refusal to speak to her likely stems from horror at her behavior. They're likely appalled by her involvement with a married man whose wife was battling cancer. If your family continues to badger you about attending, you could insist on delivering the first speech at the reception, assuming they wouldn't want to hear your thoughts on the happy couple. You're merely following your father's lead by showing what it's like when someone is no longer present, just a tad ahead of schedule. I completely agree with you. Your insight is right on point. If I were in your shoes, I would echo your sentiments about their deplorable and damaging relationship, deliver a speech, and then make a swift exit, cutting off all contact. They're treating you terribly in an attempt to save face, but you deserve far better, my dear. It seems like your father's family is complicit in covering up his reprehensible behavior. It's disheartening to see that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I am genuinely sorry that you're going through this. You deserve so much more. I hope you're given the space and respect you need to grieve and heal from losing both of your parents in such a tragic manner. As for my own situation, my boyfriend 26 and I 25 have been together for nearly 3 years now, and we're expecting our first child in March. We've always been open about the idea of marriage, so the engagement itself wouldn't come as a surprise. However, we decided to design my engagement ring together since he's not familiar with jewelry and my tastes. During that process, I made it clear that I wanted a proposal surrounded by my closest friends and family. Their involvement was crucial to me. After we ordered the ring, I was left in the dark about when it would be ready or when he would propose. So, I eagerly awaited the moment. 2 nights ago, while we were on our usual evening walk with our dogs along the beach, he began expressing his love and gratitude for me. Then, unexpectedly, he presented the ring and asked me to marry him. I was taken aback and somewhat shocked by the suddenness of it all. While I kissed him and expressed my love and appreciation, I couldn't bring myself to say yes at that moment because I really wanted my closest friends and family to be part of the experience. He became quite upset and expressed his desire for a more intimate proposal, wanting to cherish the moment between just the two of us, rather than in front of others. Despite my attempts to discuss the matter with him over the past few days, he's mostly given me the silent treatment. While I understand his perspective, I had to design my own ring because he often overlooks details like the jewelry I wear. Therefore, I wanted the proposal to be something he put genuine thought into to make it truly special for me. I've heard numerous stories where a woman declined a public proposal because she preferred a private moment, and in those instances, people generally sympathized with her and her wishes. From my viewpoint, this is a similar scenario but reversed, so I fail to see why my actions were deemed so wrong. Am I the one at fault? Yes, you're in the wrong, and your approach is rather insensitive. When did proposals become so scripted? By constructing such specific expectations, you essentially set yourself up for disappointment. If you envisioned such a scenario, perhaps you should have proposed to yourself, as you already had a detailed plan in mind. Proposals are about mutual feelings and consideration for each other's preferences. If he desires privacy and intimacy, you should respect that instead of insisting on a grand gesture for your own satisfaction. Rejecting his proposal because it didn't align with your scripted vision undermines the genuine sentiment behind it. If you continue to prioritize your desires over his, it may damage the relationship irreparably. Absolutely. It seems like everything revolves around what she wants, disregarding his desires. Wedding planning with her would likely be a nightmare. It's like she believes she's the main character in her own story. While friends and family might be happy for you, it's hard to fathom caring so much about being included in the proposal. My wife 27 and I 27 have been together for 4.5 years and married for 2. We discussed having children before marriage and both agreed on wanting kids. Shortly after tying the knot, we started trying for a baby, and she became pregnant. However, she expressed doubts about having children at the time. We talked it over, and she conveyed that she wasn't ready yet. I respected her decision and didn't press the matter further, considering she was the one carrying the child. 3 weeks ago, she became pregnant again, and while I was thrilled, she remained uncertain. She mentioned wanting to postpone having kids a bit longer, and when I inquired about a timeline, she simply stated that she'd let me know when she felt ready. When I asked if she still wanted kids at all, she gave a vague response, expressing uncertainty about her desire for children without further elaboration. Feeling conflicted, I expressed my need to rethink our relationship if this was the path she intended to take. After she underwent the procedure, I initiated divorce proceedings a few weeks later. Some mutual acquaintances are criticizing me for ending the marriage over this, and she's reached out to me in tears several times. I want to reconcile, but having children and starting a family are essential to me. Her indecision and lack of clarity about her desires feel like she's stringing me along. Am I wrong for divorcing my wife? Certainly not wrong for considering divorce. It's clear that you both have different aspirations, and continuing the relationship wouldn't be fair to either of you. It's crucial to end things and move forward to find someone who shares your goals and values. Her indecisiveness and poor communication are valid reasons for feeling betrayed, especially after assuming shared objectives in your marriage. It's evident that she got pregnant twice during your marriage, but terminated both pregnancies because she didn't feel prepared despite actively trying to conceive. If you and your partner aren't aligned on starting a family, I question the viability of the relationship. It's concerning when someone actively seeks pregnancy only to change their mind twice. This behavior is far from typical, and it's understandable to be hesitant about having children with such unpredictability. You're making the right decision by considering ending the relationship. It's crucial to find a partner who shares your desires and life goals. I've been through a similar situation, and divorcing my partner was the best decision I made. I'm much happier now with someone who is transparent about their intentions and future plans. Your husband, aged 30, has endured severe abandonment issues stemming from his tumultuous relationship with his mother. Abandoned by her at a young age, he experienced instability and emotional trauma. His mother's manipulative behavior mirrors that of her own mother, creating a toxic family dynamic. Despite his troubled upbringing, he managed to find stability until around age 19 when his mother's presence resurfaced. I met him when he was 22, still living with his sister, and I witnessed firsthand the emotional scars left by his mother's actions. My disdain for her solidified after we lost our child, just 5 months into our relationship. When I was in a critical condition, she arrived unannounced at our home to check on her son, uttering to him, "It's for the best, honey," without sparing me a single word. Throughout the past 8 years, she has consistently dashed his dreams, dissuading him from pursuing opportunities like moving out of state or embarking on certain career paths. Instead, she steers him towards less ambitious endeavors, like joining her at a rehab facility where the pay is meager. Whenever he considers selling one of his prized possessions, she manipulates him into handing it over to her without any compensation. Since the birth of our daughter, her behavior has only escalated. At our baby shower, she nonchalantly expressed her indifference towards my pregnancy, and during the delivery, she barged into the labor room clinging to my husband without an ounce of concern for me. Despite my firm insistence that she leave, it took my husband's intervention to finally usher her out, earning him some well-deserved praise from me. Yet, despite these glaring instances of overreach, when my husband mentioned his aspirations of starting his own business, she shamelessly encouraged him to uproot his life, relocate out of state, and then, only then, think about bringing us along. It's particularly galling given that years ago, she was instrumental in dissuading him from leaving the state, making her current suggestion reek of manipulation and an attempt to distance him from me and our child. What makes matters worse is her subtle approach to criticism. She never openly expresses disdain for me, always cloaking her disapproval in layers of sugar-coated niceties, making it challenging to decipher her true intentions unless one is actively on the lookout. Regardless, I firmly stated that my husband wouldn't leave me and our baby to pursue opportunities out of state. She hinted that it would benefit everyone, implying there were more opportunities elsewhere. That's when I lost my cool and made a sarcastic remark about her wanting him to abandon us, drawing a parallel to how she abandoned him in the past. I suggested he could leave for a year, mirroring her past actions, and joked about dropping off the baby at social services to make things easier for her. It was time to sever ties with this toxic influence, and I gave my husband an ultimatum: choose between her or me. She stormed out, then called my husband, demanding he make an immediate decision. Now, my husband refuses to engage with either of us, claiming we're both behaving childishly. He criticized me for my harsh words, deeming them inappropriate. However, he failed to acknowledge the context of her toxic behavior and my deliberate response. To add context, she's barely interacted with our daughter, holding her briefly only once and discouraging prolonged contact to avoid spoiling her. Despite her minimal involvement, she frequently visits, often trying to lure my husband away under the guise of needing help with household tasks. I admit I intended to provoke her, fully aware it might trigger her abandonment trauma. But there's more to consider. I've made attempts to encourage him to seek therapy, and he even scheduled an appointment. However, his mother intervened and convinced him otherwise, asserting that therapy was unnecessary and that he could spend his time on more enjoyable pursuits. When my mother-in-law suggested he leave us behind and move out of state, he seemed to entertain the idea, agreeing that it could be beneficial. I deliberately invoked his trauma to highlight the parallels between his mother's past actions and the current situation. She had abandoned him, leaving him behind, and justified it as being for everyone's benefit, much like she was now attempting to persuade him to leave us. Was it intentional? Yes. Was it manipulative? Perhaps. But it was necessary for him to recognize the manipulation and dysfunction. In this scenario, you are not the one at fault. Your mother-in-law's behavior is characteristic of narcissism. She perceives her son solely as a means of fulfilling her own needs and fears losing him to his new family. Her manipulation extends beyond personal relationships and has hindered his professional development over the years. It's crucial for him to acknowledge these patterns and break free from her influence. She's scheming to drive a wedge between him and his newfound family, blindsiding him to her ulterior motives. Despite her attempts to mask her manipulative behavior by appearing at significant moments like your miscarriage, childbirth, and baby shower, her facade crumbles when she makes callous remarks like, "It's for the best that she lost the baby," or "Her pregnancy was of no importance to me." It's evident she avoids direct communication with you, preferring to butter up her son instead. He's unwittingly trapped in a cycle of narcissistic abuse, oblivious to the toxic dynamics at play. He may cherish his mother's presence, but he fails to recognize the detrimental impact it has on his well-being. If his mother succeeds in sabotaging your marriage, she'll discard him without a second thought, leaving him broken and vulnerable. And sadly, your granddaughter may become her next target once she's of age. Perhaps it's time to seriously consider her offer to relocate out of state. If your husband remains under her sway, you might be better off starting anew elsewhere, ensuring your family's well-being. If he's unable to break free from his mother's influence, you may need to be the one to sever the ties that bind, protecting your family from further harm.